Reddit. Did your parents reveal a secret to you once you reached adulthood? If so, what was it? That I had a much older half-sister. Apparently my father had got some girl knocked up in high school. Her parents didn't like him and thought they were too young to raise a kid, so they just packed up and moved. He knew she existed, but never tried to locate her and just moved on with his life. After I was in college, the sister had contacted him and they got together. Well, nobody bothered to mention this fact to me until I come home from college for Thanksgiving and this strange woman is sitting at the table and my dad says, "Meet your sister." Man, that feels like the premise of a comedy movie. I hope you guys have connected over the years. When I was a kid, my dad accidentally killed a raccoon with his car. It had a young one with it that wasn't hit, so we adopted the baby raccoon. We adored it, but we were not at all equipped to care for it. There was no lock or cage that could stop this thing. It was very clever, strong, and curious. It got into cupboards and ate food and trash, and we'd find its shit in the most random places. One day my dad sat me down and told me that my raccoon had gone to live on a farm. I was old enough to know what that meant, and I was heartbroken. Just a few years ago I was telling this story to my husband and my dad interrupted me and said that he actually gave my raccoon away to a work acquaintance of his that had a farm and a lot of wooded property. It had become so accustomed to humans it constantly broke into the man's house and ate his food, and got enormously fat and lived a long ornery raccoon life. Not yet, but when I was in college and my parents got divorced, my dad gave me all the information on what to do if he passes. Told me where things are, and had me go to his bank to sign a document for access to his account after he dies. When we were leaving the bank, he told me, "Your mother is not who you think she is. Everything you need to know is in my deposit box." I have no clue what he could be talking about. He never elaborated, and my mom laughed it off when I told her about it. Guess I'll find out one day. When I turned 18 I got a letter from a distant aunt and uncle wishing me a happy birthday. I hadn't seen them since I was a baby, but there's hundreds of pictures of them and me together when I was a baby. They used to babysit me a lot and take me on vacations with them. My mom told me they used me to smuggle things. I guess they said it was super easy to smuggle just about anything with a baby. At one point literally hiding cocaine in my diaper. There was story growing up about how a local prince wanted to marry me and offered things like cows for my hand in marriage. When my father passed away I went to my home country and met cousins I had not met before. Turned out the prince was the president's son and it wasn't an offer, it was a demand. We snuck out of the country because he was going to make me his wife. Bear in mind, I was a toddler. My mom filled in the backstory. The company my dad worked for had to smuggle us out of the country. My life was so exciting when I was 6. Edit, I want to be clear that the dude was not a pedo, this was going to be an arranged marriage for when I became of age. That secret was revealed to me not when I reached adulthood but when my father passed away. When I was a baby, I had a baby doll which I loved. I still have that doll now that I am 28 yo. One day, a month about after my father's death, my mother told me that he had bought me 3 same baby dolls and when the one I was using had gotten damaged, he secretly replaced her with a new one. He kept that secret as a present for the day of my wedding, along with all the baby dolls I had used all those years. He didn't make it to reveal it to me himself. When I was a kid, I used to be friends with the next door woman, who was about 20 years old. To me she was a best friend because she would read to me, or play with me or take me to walks. One morning I woke up and her dad was at my house and gave me a painting she made, then my parents told me my friend had to move to another city for work and she left me the painting to remember her. Sometime later we moved to another city but returned years after when my dad died. I found the dad and sister were living there still. There I knew the truth, My friend had died on a car accident back then, but they decided to lie to me because they didn't want to hurt me. Edit. Thank you all for the upvotes and awards and sorry messages, Heartsuit. I still have the painting and am close to her sister, who is the only one left. Yes. That I had a half-brother that was adopted soon after his birth. I met him when I was 13. My mom kind of had to tell me as he had become a policeman and was at our house to arrest my dad. He didn't keep in touch, I don't blame him. Same shit happened to me but no one told me. My half-sister found me on Instagram and contacted me when I was 18 just to ask for rent money. She really was my real sister, but she really was only interested in getting cash from me and my mom, so when I said no she just stopped talking and replying. My mom met my dad in the military. I learned she joined the military to escape her town. Her best friend had killed himself and she dropped out of school. She started hanging out with his dad a lot and he convinced her to go back to high school and graduate. They became really close and his wife learned about it. At her graduation the wife finally met my mom and told her she was going to kill her for messing around with her husband. So my mom joined the military and didn't tell anyone until a couple years later after she had met my dad and had me. I learned all this when I was like 25. I don't even know if my dad knew the whole story as they had never brought it up. My mom regularly says things without thinking, and will reveal truths she forgot she told me otherwise about. When I was a kid her boss would babysit me at her work so she didn't have to get daycare. He would always put on the Horton Hears a Who VHS and let me look through his rock collection. He was great and we thought of him like family. So when he passed from illness after we moved I was very bummed. Years following, I was at my mom's house, and something reminded me of him. I mentioned him to my mom and she says, "Oh yeah, it was so crazy that he killed himself." You mean he was sick, right? No, he hung himself, you knew that? Nope, sure didn't, Mom. Was very sad that someone who brought so much joy to our lives was going through such a struggle and I never knew. When I was 7, my dad died while we were staying at his place, in a different country. We were supposed to stay 2 weeks, but I recall not staying over a week. He died at his office while we were at his place. Other people from my family came to get us late at night, and after a day or two, we flew back home. But my brother, 8, and I didn't know anything that has happened and we didn't know why we were taken away from my dad. Once we arrived home, my mom and a lady from the school sat us down at the kitchen table, and announced that our father died. My mom has told us that he died due to some medical reasons or whatever, but it's only years later, when I was 21 or 22, that a stepbrother, son of my father, that I've only seen as a kid and then suddenly came back briefly in my life, told me that my dad actually died from gunshots while he was at work in his office. So my mom didn't actually tell me herself, and when I told her that I knew, she was upset at my stepbrother for telling me the truth about my father's death. When I turned 18, my dad told me how he'd spent the better part of 10 years as a drug smuggler. Mostly cocaine and weed that they would get in South America, put on small planes to land somewhere in the Caribbean and then move to Florida on super fast boats they'd only run at night. He didn't tell me all the insane stories I'm sure he had, but he did tell me about being stuck in a bar in Colombia for an entire day during an attempted coup and how more than once they traded guns they stole to the FARC for cocaine. This was all especially crazy since to me he was pretty much the most straight-laced dude alive. Background: my mom's grandparents divorced not long before I was born, then 2 years later my grandfather remarried. My biological grandmother died when I was young, so growing my grandfather's new wife was basically my grandmother. We'll call her Patty. Patty is weird, she means well, but tends to put her foot in her mouth and ask people weirdly personal questions, about their sex lives especially. Still, she's family so whatever. Except, growing up, My mom and her two siblings hated Patty. When I was younger it was kind of minor, just occasional snide comments behind her back, but as I got older it became increasingly clear that they couldn't stand the woman. It was always so odd to me. Yes, she was a goof, but whatever, lots of people in our family had quirks. Then, when I was in my 20s, my grandfather died. As I was sitting down with my mom, going over some old photos of my granddad, there was a picture of Patty that my mom immediately made a rude comment about. I finally asked, "Why do you guys hate her so much?" My mom looked at me, confused, then realization appeared on her face. "Oh, we never told you, did we?" Turns out the reason my biological grandparents got divorced was because my grandfather had been cheating on my grandmother with Patty, going back more than a decade before the divorce. They didn't hate her because she was weird, they hated her because she was a homewrecker. It seemed kind of unfair to me that they directed all their hate at Patty, since my grandfather was just as, if not more, guilty, but I guess that's what people do. The funeral I think actually kind of gave my mom and her siblings a chance to put those bad feelings to rest, because after it they all started being a lot nicer and more civil towards Patty. We are from a more traditional culture where people tend to have a large amount of kids. Having 4 to 5 kids is not common, but no one will bat an eyelash. I have multiple relatives with 5 kids. Myself, I'm an only child. I would often ask my parents about siblings, but, while they are usually very engaging, they'd essentially tell me to put a cork in it. It was weird. I found out fairly recently that, when we came to America, my mom got pregnant. It was later in life, so she would have been late 30s/early 40s. Apparently the pregnancy went quite far, but lost the baby. It made a bunch of stuff click, how their fighting ramped up significantly around that time, how my dad went back to our home country for a while, etc. I think there's more to it, but they refuse to talk about it.